Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm working on cleaning some things out of my freezer. So I found a package of cod. These are cod pieces. So I'm going to make a codfish stew, Baccala. This is one of the dishes that we used to have on Christmas Eve as part of the Feast of the Seven Fishes. So when I was growing up, my godparents actually lived catty corner across the street from our house, and my godmother, Jean Pino, was Sicilian. She used to do 13 fish dinner for Christmas Eve, huge, and they had some of their relatives over. We always went over. I would go over because it was Christmas Eve to get my Christmas present because I was the godson. And she always had this huge pot of bacala on the stove. The house smelled like fish. It smelled like oil because she fried a lot of things. And I remember the bacala was so salty, but it had olives in it. So we used to pick out the olives. That was our favorite part. My mom started making it with fresh cod, and it's a little bit better, I think. But traditionally, it's made with salted cod. It's dried and salted, and you get the codfish and you put it in water in the refrigerator for like 3, 5 days, something like that, changing the water constantly. It does kind of reconstitute it. It takes some of the salt out, but it still ends up being a little salty and a really intense fish flavor. So I'm making it with fresh cod, or in this case, frozen fresh cod. It's a little bit milder, and it's a nice like fish stew that you could have anytime. So I'm going to meet you at the counter. I'll show you the ingredients and then get started cooking. So this is what I'm working with today. I have a package of wild Alaska cod pieces from Trader Joe's. So I bought the pieces. They also sell bigger like chunks of cod, but the pieces are nice for something like this because it's a stew. So you get little pieces of cod. Two potatoes, two red potatoes, an onion, and then can of whole peeled tomatoes. I'm going to try to finish up these olives. There's a lot of olives here, but these are Cerignola olives from Trader Joe's. They're a little bit mushy. Usually they're not mushy like this, but this particular jar was a little bit mushy, but they'll be good in the stew. And for this stew, you want to use olives that have pits because supposedly the pits give it more flavor. And then capers. All right, so I'm going to chop up the onion and let that saute on a low heat for probably like 10-15 minutes, like, until it's really translucent and giving off a lot of flavor. And then I'll add the tomatoes, let that simmer for a little bit, add the potatoes, get them to a point where they're almost soft before I add the celery, and then let the celery cook for a little bit. The olives and the capers will go at some point there, and the cod goes last because the cod doesn't take very long to cook. All right, so let me get this started. I'll see you at the stove. The onions have been cooking for about 5 minutes. I can see that they're starting to soften up. Very low heat. I don't want to burn them. I don't even really want to brown them. I just want to get them nice and translucent and flavorful. So this is the base. I put a little bit of salt and black pepper. And I'm going to say probably maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm going to cover them up again. Let the steam help to cook them, but just checking on them to make sure that I don't get any burning or browning going on here. My prep is done. My onions are still cooking, so I cut the potatoes in kind of smallish chunks. Sliced my celery. I drained the cod. I rinsed it and drained it. So I'm just going to leave the pieces like this as they are, and then everything else is open and ready to go in the pot. The onions, I let the onions cook for another 4 minutes or so, and they're nice and soft now, slightly caramelized, there's a little bit of color, but not much. So at this point, they're just going to kind of dissolve into the sauce. I'm using whole tomatoes, so the sauce is going to be chunky. So again, I'm going to take my tomatoes and squeeze them in the pot. You want to do this with a deep pot. Make sure that you're going deep into the bottom of the pot because they will squirt all over you. Some of them are already kind of falling apart. And you don't really have to do this if you don't want to. Just put them in the pot and let them cook a little bit and they will dissolve. But I don't know, I just think it's kind of fun to do this. With whole tomatoes, you don't want to blend them because you're going to blend the seeds as well. And then you get the bitterness from the seeds in your sauce. All right, so I have a little bit of puree left in the can. I'm just going to give it a quick rinse with a little bit of water. Not too much. And then let this cook down for about 15 minutes before I add the potatoes. The starch from the potatoes is going to thicken this up. And also as it cooks, some of the liquid is going to evaporate. I'm going to turn the heat up for a few minutes, let it come to a boil, and then I'll turn the heat back down again so it doesn't burn. My tomatoes have been cooking for about 10 minutes. So they've cooked down nicely, starting to thicken up. It's going to continue to cook and thicken up. So now I'm going to add the potatoes and let them cook probably for about 10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cover this. Oops, I just noticed I drained the olives. So the olives really give it the flavor. They can withstand a lot of cooking. So I'm going to add the olives now with the potatoes. Okay, I'm going to let that cook on a low heat for about 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to check on the potatoes now. They've been cooking for about 15 minutes. Let's see here. I can grab one. Okay. It's still feeling a little bit firm. Let me taste it. Hmm. Yeah, just slightly still uncooked in the center, but it's going to continue to cook. I'm going to put the celery in next. Um, by that time, by the time the celery's done, the potatoes should be fully cooked. I like my celery a little bit on the crunchy side, so I'm probably just going to cook the celery for about 5 minutes. And at this point, I can put in the caper. So I'm just going to do 2 hefty teaspoons or hefty spoonfuls of capers. So with the olives and the capers, and if you're using salted cod, there is a lot of salt in this. So you don't really need to add any salt, but you can taste it and see what you think you need. All right, going to cover this up, let it cook again for about 5 more minutes, and then I'll check on it. All right, let's check and see how things are doing here. It's looking good. It's nice and thick. It smells great. The tomatoes have pretty much broken down. There's still a few chunks in here, but can't really tell that these were whole tomatoes. I'm going to try a potato and a piece of celery. Okay. The potato, when I stuck my fork in it, split, so it's telling me that it's pretty much done. Yeah, still has a little crunch to it, but I still have to cook the fish, so potatoes are right on schedule. And the celery is cooked, but it has a nice crunch to it. Everything's starting to take on all these flavors, the onions, the tomatoes. All right, so we're doing good here. Next thing we want to do is just put the fish in. So this is a lot of fish. Normally, it'll just be a few pieces, but you lay the fish on top. Okay, and then I'm gently going to submerge it in the sauce so that it cooks. I just don't want to break it up too much, especially since it's already in pieces. And I'm not really sure how long this is going to need to cook. These are pretty small pieces. So probably about 5 minutes. I'll come back and check it, and I think at that point everything should be done. All right, so the fish now has been cooking for about 5 minutes. You can see it's starting to flake. And it smells great. It has that wonderful seafood flavor or smell. Yeah, it's perfect. I'm just gonna taste the potatoes one more time. They cut really easily, and it looks like it's cooked inside. Perfect. Potatoes are firm, but soft. So that's it. Ready to dish it up. Sorry, I'm just eating. All right, I'll meet you at the table. Okay, so here it is, Baccala codfish stew with potatoes, olives, celery, and capers. Delicious. For the special touch, I'm going to put a little bit of fried chili flakes. Just a little. All right. And let's give it a taste. I don't know where to start. I'll start with a piece of fish. So good. I'm not really comfortable cooking seafood. There are a few things that I'm okay with, and this is one of them. It's kind of hard to mess up as long as you're checking it along the way. You want to make sure your potatoes are cooked. As close to done as you can possibly get before you put in the celery. Celery will take about 5-7 minutes. And then the celery went for another 5 minutes or so. Can you hear that crunch? The fish took another 5 minutes or so. So just testing it, tasting it along the way. I don't think you can really overcook the potatoes. The celery depends on how much crunch you want. And then the fish, you have to be careful because the cod can get kind of tough if you overcook it. And the olives taste great. Olives, you can't really overcook olives. All right, so that is Baccala. Try it. Let me know what you think. Remember to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time in Appa's Kitchen. Bye.